through my life, whenever I was surprised, I realized, and often it was because of the things never happened in my lifetime, but happened many times in history. So I think we're in that kind of an environment, the changing world order, the changes. We have to understand the changes. So for that reason, I studied these changes going back for a long time. There are 5 major forces. The first is the debt, money, market, economy force. Credit produces buying power. That buying power makes things go up, but it also produces debt. And there's a cycle, and we experience those cycles. That's number 1. Number 2 is the internal political and social order, the left, the right, capitalism, socialism, and so on. And that was where the election is, and we're going to turn to that in a second. Number 3 is the great world order, the change in the world order. We had a system coming out of 1945 in which the United States was the dominant power. The dollar's the dominant currency. They create a set of rules. How's the system going to work? The United Nations, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, that's all changing in important ways that has a big effect. The great powers conflict, what's going on with China, Russia, it has a bearing on everything that we're doing. Number 4 is through history, acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics have killed more people than wars and toppled more orders. So they cannot be ignored, and I don't think at this time can be ignored because of the fact that there's global warming, there's other things going on. And number 5 is technology, man's inventiveness of new technologies that makes productivity rise over a period of time. And there's nothing that's going to be more important than these new technologies. So we're going through a period of those 5 factors, I think, creating almost a time warp. And the world, I think, is going to be very different in the next 3 to 5 years as a result of those. They're interrelated. So you can't talk about one without understanding that interrelationship to me. Yeah. So now we go back to the election. Okay. The real question on that election, going into that election, is would we have domestic order? How would that take place? If you had, let's say, a close election, particularly a close loss by Donald Trump, then there was a question. Would you have an orderly transition of power? Okay, risky situation. We have crossed that. We are past that. We have a mandate. Okay, the president has a mandate, the Senate, the House, and now the Supreme Court, and so on. So there's something new going on. What does that new thing look like? 2 things. If I was to take it domestically, it's reform. I'll talk about that in a second. Internationally, it's preparing for the war or the possibility of war with China, most importantly, and with other countries. Okay, now let's go into that for a second. Okay, that reformation is, it's a reformation of government and it's a reformation of the whole economy. It's going to be like Donald Trump in the administration is going to be like a corporate office. It's a capitalist reformation, and it has some of those fundamental values. That's going down to the nitty-gritty. Okay, what does that mean for technology? Like we're going to have for 20% of our key chips have got to be produced in the United States by 2030. Okay, in order to do that, how do you do that? That's connected to an energy plan. That's connected. Okay, so there are a number of initiatives here. There's an immigration, there's tariffs, there's many things that are initiative.
As the Department of Governmental Efficiency, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, to your point, that this is going to become much more like a corporation, we'll see what that ends up being.
Right. So I won't go through all the particulars because I'll just ramble too long. But instead, I want to say, okay, that there's that taking place. And then there will be things that are not taking place. And now you're seeing the prioritization of these things. Which are the ones that are going to be? And what are those people particularly going to be like who get into that? And if you look at the type of people that are being there, these people are tough, committed to the mission, and they're hard asses. I mean, they're
I think loyal is the word you hear a lot too.
Well, loyal, and also they're tough.
Yeah.
Like if you're making choices of this thing or that, there's no subtlety about that. So things like deregulation and the changes, that's what's going to happen domestically. And then internationally, self-sufficiency and a confrontation. So you're going to see fighters in that mission. Some things are going to go on the side. We don't have to talk about those. But anyway, that's what the picture looks like.
Right. We talked last when you came out with the principles for dealing with the changing world order. That book pretty much predicted the moment we're in right now. Even though we didn't get those results at that time, they're here today.
We have that world order today.
It is right here today. So I was going to ask you about your cycles principles. What cycle are we in now? You pretty much well described it, but how seriously, both as a functioning member of society, but also as somebody who puts money to work, do you take some of the campaign pledges? Do you take some of the policy promises when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to taxes, when it comes to deregulation, when it comes to government spending on things like deportation and defense?
I take those very seriously. I think that that's right. And then internationally, we have to recognize what that picture looks like too. I'm going to just touch on that. But on touching on the domestic, yes, I believe that this plan has been well in the works, that this for quite a time. And I think that they're going to be able to hit the ground running. And so we're going to see those changes. We're going to have now a time where aspirations and that inspiration is going to hit the realities. Okay, you might have to change laws. You know what it's like to change laws? You can't do everything. So we're going to see the prioritization of that, but there's going to be the need. You have to pay attention to the first 100 days, and then you must have these things accomplished in the first 2 years. So there's a priority question in terms of like, how good are they in actually pulling these things off? But those directions are real. Internationally, it's changed everything, okay? Because we've come from a world in 1945, the New World Order. The world ended in terms of that, and we had a system, multilateral organizations and all this. Now we have we don't have that system. We have an America First system, and you have a China First system, and so on. So there are no rules of the game. That is a power thing. So we're now it's tougher to have allies. You're going to have deals, but you're not going to have allies. And so different part of the world. We're paying attention now a lot to the United States. Of course, the United States is important, and we're Americans in here. But if you really want to understand the world, you have to understand how it's changing in a broader sense. What does it mean in India? What is the ASEAN countries going to be like? What is the Middle East like, the Gulf countries, and so on? That world is changing in a way that we shouldn't so singularly look at through an American lens.
Sure. Everything is connected, as we know. You do such a good job of pointing that out across all of your work, but we're also in this period of what feels like deglobalization, right? We used to kind of work together a little bit, supply chains. We've been pulling apart, getting more regional, getting tougher, and at a time where tensions are rising pretty much everywhere you look.
The way I actually find it is, geopolitically, you're in one of three categories. You're on the American ally side, you're on the Chinese and other side, or you're neutral. You don't want to get involved geopolitically. So we're going to have, for example, two totally different technology systems that are going to develop. An American version, a Chinese version, and so on. But in terms of globalization, I'm finding out like we're more globalized than in almost anything. Like everybody's together, same group of people doing deals. Okay. Right. They come from all different countries. Never before in my life was it like this. So you can find Saudis and Indonesians and Singaporeans and everybody, they're all in the same group. There's a group and they're all doing deals. And before it used to be much more, okay, here's Americans, and you wouldn't have Saudis or you wouldn't have doing the same kind of deals. They could be venture deals. They could be private equity deals. So this globalization of the economic part of it in terms of doing deals is very globalized. The understanding of people is more globalized. The education of a lot of people is more globalized. So both forces are at work.
Right. Yeah, people say we're getting more deglobalized, but as you say, money talks when it comes to deal making. I just came from a gathering of a bunch of global investors, big pension funds, big sovereign wealth funds. Everybody's looking to put money to work, but they're also looking to shore up their own interest because they can't predict the future either. They just know it's going to get a lot more complicated.
And they never been together the way they were.
Right.
When you went to that meeting
Yeah.
and you're looking who's around, wow, it's like, wow, they never were together like this. And they didn't speak the same language, in terms of investing or anything.
Yep.
Now they all speak the same language. They're all looking at the same deals.
Yeah.
They're all saying, can we work together or can I outbid you?